I just wanted to make a video sharing my progress along the way of a modification I'm doing to this truck. This is a 90 Chevrolet Silverado 3500. It's a big block truck, and for transmission it's got a turbo 400. Little history on it: I got it with a blown engine. It was a TBI engine, obviously, in 1990. And I had a really sound low mile 454 from actually from an RV. It came out of a 1984 Pace Arrow. And this is an engine that I bought secondhand, went through it, and just did the needed, well, I shouldn't even say needed because it was in really good shape. But just for my peace of mind, I did knock it all the way apart and do rings, bearings, gaskets. And while in there, I put a Summit 1300 hydraulic cam in there, exhaust headers eventually, and aluminum intake. And I did carburate that engine. So, but to recap on the project, the truck started life as a long bed. Again, it's a 3500 single rear wheel, and I was interested in trying my hand at turning it into a short box. I have another truck that's a long bed, and so it wasn't important for me to keep this truck, exactly factory form, and it has kind of turned into my hobby, little hobby vehicle in recent times. So, pretty stock looking big block. Certainly nothing special. It runs really well. Transmission is a turbo 400. Rear axle's a 373. I have done quite a bit of work at this point in time. I didn't do a lot of videos documenting my steps along the way, but I did elect to go the old route of knocking the hangers loose from the frame and moving everything forward 14 inches. That is kind of the ingredient given on a lot of the videos that I've watched on YouTube. And I've got access to a lift here, and I've got enough tools, and I felt confident in a little bit of fabricating if I needed to do that. But from the videos I watched, it didn't seem to indicate that there would be a lot of fabricating to this job. But I came across the need to do quite a bit more than a lot of the videos seem to depict. And I'll just kind of share those things. Again, this is largely put back together by this point. I've done a lot of work. The frame's been cut in the rear. The hangers have been re-welded on. I didn't bolt them, and I'll kind of quickly explain why I did what I did. There's other ways to do it. I'm certainly not trying to make the argument that this is the only way. The real way would probably be to cut the frame under the cab and move it forward, but you still have the fact that the factory angle of the frame is much more gradual and long on a long bed. It's my understanding that a short box frame takes a much more abrupt elevation before it starts going back. So a long bed frame will never be a short bed frame, really, no matter what you do, unless you fabricated this angle right here to replicate that short bed. That is my understanding. Anyway, so here's the biggest hang up that I found. If I can get in here, I'm kind of dealing with some tight spaces right now. As this frame progresses up toward the back of the cab, it gets quite a bit wider. And that's what prevented me from simply knocking the hangers loose from the frame and simply moving everything forward. If I would have done that, now I know people have done that, and I have seen the videos, it can be done, but in my observation, it would have put so much like outward pressure on the leaf springs. By the time you move the whole shebang forward 14 inches, the new location for the front hangers is like a whole inch and a half wider. The frame grows so much wider as it approached the cab. That is the differential that I encountered from the front hangers being right here to needing to move them forward up to there. The frame is an inch and a half wider up there. And now back here where the rear hangers ended up, it is also wider, but not quite as much. The frame takes a much more aggressive, progressively wider shape up toward the cab, but it's still wider in the back. And I did not want that side load on my leaves. I think it would have just tore up the leaf spring bushings, and I'm afraid it would have really bound up the situation. And so what I did is I modified my hangers, and so like I said, where the front hangers ended up, the frame being a whole inch and a half wider from side to side than where the hangers are originally located, I took some profile off of my hangers, and I'll show you that if you're all aware of what a hanger looks like. I ended up chopping almost 3/4 inch of profile off of my hanger, my front hanger. And in doing that, I removed the rivet flange, which people typically use to bolt back onto the frame. I did some pretty extensive modification to those hangers to reduce their side profile dimension to take up for that inch and a half frame width increase. And that worked pretty well for me. I welded like a captured nut on the inside of the frame in there so that I can always take out my leaf spring bolt. And because otherwise the gas tank kind of crowds that interior of the channel, and if the day comes I need to drop my leaf springs, I can just undo my bolt right there. I don't ever plan on moving this thing back to long bed, so I wasn't opposed to welding my hangers onto the frame. Now similarly with the rear, it's hard to describe the profile of the rear hangers, but they almost have kind of a ribbed fashion going on for strength. And I couldn't necessarily chop that out of the rear hanger, so I just kind of cut some channels in the rear of the frame so that those ribs would inset into the channel. And I split an inch and 3/8 in half, and that is the amount of inset into the frame that I channeled these rear hangers into. And so that made a completely non-binded suspension situation. That was my solution to that problem. Of course, I had to go with a short bed fuel tank. No issues there. One thing I've seen people do is have to beat a dent in the top of the tank. Myself, I just relieved the top of the cross member, and then I'll add a plate in there to regain the strength. But I don't believe that this cross member needs that. It's pretty stout as it is, and really not a whole lot is hanging from that except for the gas tank. I was able to carefully get this cross member out as it was in its long bed form. I kind of carefully got those rivets chiseled off and removed that, because I knew another issue I saw was when people put their situation back together, these frame rails, they actually have a lot of flex, and if they're not re-supported, re-solidified, they tend to bend inward like this. As the weight on the truck and as the suspension functions, these channels will actually will clock in like that. And so by harvesting this factory cross member, and I just welded it back in place, I am extremely solid at the rear frame channels. And so working through, well, before that, I did have to cut my drive shaft, which that's done. Cut it there at the factory weld, and I was able to just very carefully make that cut around the circumference of the drive shaft. I was able to hammer that rear yoke out. I mean, I was very happy with the way that came out. Got a good clean cut on it, welded it back together. It's back in business so that I can just simply move the truck around for the duration of the project. I'll end up sending it to a drive shaft shop to have rebalanced. Had to work through some brake line modification, which was obvious, but it was also needed for me because some of my brake lines had some rust, and that allowed me to remedy that while I was in there. Currently, I'm working through shortening my exhaust. This is actually the factory tailpipe. I'm going to be able to just shorten it a little bit, essentially, and re-weld it up to this RV muffler that I've got. It's a 2-into-1, like 2.5. There it is. There's the 2 coming in. 2.5 coming in. 3 inches coming out. So this is my short box. Nothing special about it. Found it on Marketplace. It's gonna need just a little bit of body work in terms of a little bit of dings and dents, but really truly not bad in the rust department. Before this box came up here, I had it upside down, and we did some pretty extensive cleaning. I bought a quart of some Eastwood rust inhibitor paint, and I got it all coated up, and so it's good enough, I think, for what it is. This is going to be just a driver truck, something that I'm going to enjoy and drive as much as I feasibly can. It's certainly not a show truck, but I do want it to be clean, and before I put the box back on, I'll coat the frame. So that's where I am at. Just wanted to document some of that stuff, mainly the hanger situation that I encountered. I understand videos I've seen, other people have had pretty good luck with simply moving everything forward. I did not have that same luck. That really hung me up. The way that it would have really pushed out on my leaf springs, moving this stuff forward with the frame width growing as I come further forward. There was one other thing though. I did away with the 5+1 3500 leaf springs. One of them happened to have a break, and so I didn't want to put that back in. And I found a set of, on Marketplace, a set of 2,500 leaves. Fun fact here, these leaves are from, and again, they're a 4+1. So I figured by moving this whole axle assembly forward, if I would have had those 3,500 leaves, it would have just made it immensely stiff. I mean, essentially, you're moving everything forward, you're reducing the lever on the back of the truck. And so I didn't want a super stiff suspension. I'm not going to pull a trailer or load this thing up. I mean, it has the ability to act as a truck, but it's just not what I'm going to use it as. It's still going to be very usable if somebody wanted to treat it that way. But anyway, I went with these leaves I found on Marketplace. They're from a 2010 2500 HD Silverado, and every dimension was exactly the same as the older vintage 88 to 98. So, fun fact, length is the same, width is the same, from center back 32 inches, center forward 32 inches, exactly the same as the 88 to 98 model. The only detail that was different is the eyelet holes on this older vintage spring are 9/16 bolt front and rear. On this 2010 spring, it has 9/16 rear eyelet, 5/8 front eyelet. So all I had to do was drill out my hanger and go to the hardware store and buy a 5/8 bolt. Easy day, no problem. You know, if there ever was in any difference at all, that's about the best difference that could have existed. It was so easy to overcome. So that's the project at hand. If there's anything else that comes up on my way here, I'll do my best to document it and share, because I was really appreciative of all the videos that I found on YouTube. They really helped me, and I even asked some questions in the comments, and the people posting those videos were kind enough to answer. So thank you for every one of you who has posted details of your project. It's really helped me out. Well, have a great day.